Good to go.
Okay. All right. So thanks so much for letting me come on and talk to you guys. Katie and I kind of talked about a little bit of a game plan and wanted to really give you 3 chunks of courses to really focus on. So we're going to start with just like a beginner's course, but I will tell you, like, even if you're super good at social media, there's probably some things that you'll still learn from this because there's a lot that is just easily overlooked steps that I think even myself, until I was really studying this, didn't take time to really put effort into. So even if you feel like you know everything that there is to know, you're confident in it, I think you'll still get some things out of this. So that being said, the 3 courses, let me make this bigger. The 3 courses that we're going to talk through, we're going to do kind of a beginner's course tonight. Then the next time we get together, and times to be determined by Katie on that, we're going to talk about building a following and getting engagement. And then the next meeting that we'll talk about, we're really going to talk about third-party apps that can really help simplify your social media game. The whole goal of this is that you want to connect with more people as quickly as possible and build relationships. So the more shortcuts, the better. Okay, so that being said, let's go just start going right through this. Okay, first, I always just want to give people a little bit of an overview on social media. First of all, what it is. It's a way to connect with more people. It's a way to build trust with an audience. And it's a way to create a window of opportunity to share Shaklee. Like, how many of you have ever thought about social media and using it to build your Shaklee business, and you immediately think of that person in another company who was like spamming their feed with, oh my gosh, join my team, buy this, you'll never like join this, it's incredible. And that's all they talk about. Nobody wants to be that person. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that won't work anyway. So what we're really trying to do is build relationships to create a window of opportunity that you can share Shaklee in an authentic and meaningful way. The other thing I'll say, it's work. If you're kind of joining this thinking I can give you some magic things to post and it's going to turn your business around, like, this probably isn't a good fit for you. Because to build a presence on social takes consistency, it takes time. It's a platform that is always changing, and you have to be willing to really put yourself out there. So if you're thinking, well, I'm just going to talk about my business once in a while and post sometimes and see what happens, it's just like in, real day-to-day face-to-face life. If you occasionally bring up your business to people once in a while, do you think you'll have a big team? No. So it's work to build a presence online, to build those relationships. It takes work and it takes consistency. So just always want to be clear with that. I always tell people, if you're nervous to sell on social media, don't be, because I'm not going to teach you how to be that person that I just talked about. And then the other thing that people tend to say is like, well, you can't build relationships unless you're face to face, or this business has to be belly to belly. And sure, maybe, but I will tell you that you can build a relationship with someone on screen to screen way quicker than you can build one face to face. In fact, I talked to Katie on the phone. I don't know, how long was it before I met you in person, Katie? Like a year, maybe? It was a while. And by the time we met in person, it was like, oh my gosh, like, it's so good to finally meet you. And we had that relationship. So you absolutely can build relationships this way. And don't be afraid of being that person, because I will not teach you to be that person. It won't work anyway. Okay. So it's not a silver bullet. Like, there's no magic post. Like I said, it's not a replacement for everything you're doing. If you're doing things in your business that's working right now, don't just throw that out the window because you're going to be good on Instagram. It's an ad, and it's not an excuse to not hold in-person events. I think sometimes people think, well, I can just live behind a computer screen forever. You can't. There's always a place for that in-person connection. It's the reason we go to conference every year. That, like, community, that piece of it still exists. This is not a replacement for it. And again, I sound like I'm scaring you away. It's not easy. And I don't say that to make you feel stressed out about this, because you will be shocked at how good you are at social media if you stick to it for the next week or so. You'll learn very quickly, but it takes time. It's consistency, and but it's not a magic bullet. So that being said, what is it? At its core, it's building relationships of trust to create a window of opportunity to offer your product. So as we think about everything we do on social, it's how can I have people get to know me and trust me so that when they have a health need or when they're thinking they want to use different cleaners or, clean up their nutrition, that they start associating you with that cause. If you're the person that's always talking about Shaklee, you're going to turn them off. But if you're getting to know them, if you're building relationships with them, if you're commenting on their posts and going back and forth, then when you have the opportunity to do that, that's just a really warm prospect that you can present to. So at its core, that's the definition of it. Okay. So how do you build trust? I think this is like kind of an important concept to really to lay the foundation of it. You do it exactly the same way as you would do it in person. You share authentically and you get to know people. If we were friends, or if our kids went to kindergarten, you wouldn't walk up to me in the kindergarten drive line and say, oh, here's my personal website, order the Vitalizer, here's the SKU number, here's how much it costs. Like, you would never do that, right? What would you do? You would get to know me. We would talk about our kids. You would ask me questions. I would ask you questions. And you'd find a way to bring Shaklee up by listening for a need, right? Social media is the same way. You are doing all those steps, but you're doing it on a screen. Okay, so let's talk about sharing authentically, because here's usually what happens with people is they're like, okay, I'm excited to do this. I'm ready to build on social media. And then they have their phone out and they're ready to go. And it's like, well, what do I even say? Like, I don't know what to share. I don't know where to start. Like, I have kind of a boring life personally. Nobody cares what my 3 kids and I did all day. Like, how many have been there? You just don't know what to say. I'm going to give you an exercise that can kind of give you a little bit of context. And really what we're doing is we're identifying what your voice is. What's your brand voice? When people think of Kate Derico or Lauren Breeden or Katie Odom, what do they immediately associate it with you? And this is kind of just a way to get started. The more you do, the more this will just become naturally. But if you're like concerned as to what to post, this is a great exercise. First, I want you to identify 3 passions or hobbies that you're into. Maybe it's yoga, working, and reading. Maybe it's like skiing, swimming, and gardening. Whatever those 3 things are that you absolutely love to do that are a big part of your life. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your faith. Like, what are those big things that you're really passionate about? Then the other thing I want you to identify, what are 3 characteristics or emotions that when I think of you, that you want to be related to? So in this example, happy, motivated, inclusive. Like, what do you want people to really feel as they read your posts? This becomes the framework of the way you sound, the way you talk, the way you write, the pictures you show. Let me give you an example. If I tell you that I absolutely love clean eating and the only thing I ever show you are pictures of me in the drive-thru at Wendy's, does that make sense? No, it's not. This is a way to really identify when I follow Lauren or when I follow Katie, what am I really what should I expect to see? And then you have to stick to it. Like I said, if you're talking about being healthy, you're not going to be taking pictures of feeding your kids fast food every night. But this is a good way to start getting your mind thinking about what you should post about. Okay. This is your advertisement. Who are you and why do I want to follow you? And specifically, I mean your profile. So we're going to talk a lot about Instagram. I will say that a lot of these principles carry over into Facebook, into other platforms. But in this course, we're really going to be focusing on Instagram. So the picture that I have right here for you, that's called your profile page. Even a few years ago on Instagram, like to follow people, it was like, well, sure, I'll follow them. People were like really generous with who they followed. It's not really the case like that anymore. When I come to your page, you're telling me a couple of things. Number 1, who are you? But number 2, why do I want to follow you? What benefit do I have by following you? Are you going to make me laugh every day? Are you going to give me weight loss tips? Are you going to talk to me about clean eating? Do I get good exercise tips? Do I get good mom hacks? Like, what do I get by following you? And I think you have to be really critical about this, again, just because it's not like it was a few years ago where just anybody would follow you. People want to know what's the benefit they're getting from clicking that follow button. So that being said, it's really important to spend time in the setup of your account. I'm not going to cover that. So let's talk about the setup of the account. So the first thing is, and I don't know what you guys, how you're set up, but I just wanted to make sure you understand the difference between the two different accounts. First, we have a business account versus a personal account. A business account is an account on Instagram. It's public and it allows you to see really great insights about posts that you have. So for example, if I'm a business account and I put up a post, I'll have a little button by it that says view insights. It gives me a lot of really good data that I can then go back and kind of analyze and say, okay, what content is performing well? What time of the day did I post it? It gives me some awesome information on how to be more efficient in terms of content and timing of posts. If you're a personal account, you won't get any of that. The other thing I want to talk to you is the difference between a private account and a public account. I would never tell anyone that they had to be a public account, but I will tell you, if you're not a public account, it will be very hard to connect with people who you aren't following or who aren't following you. What I mean by that is if you're private, the only people that are seeing any of your messages are people that are in your network that you've allowed to follow you. If you're using hashtags even, the only people that will see those images are people who follow you, who have access to see you in that hashtag. So you're just so limited with who you can connect to. So not only are you having to find and connect with people and build a relationship, but you're also having to go through the process of them requesting to follow you. It adds an extra layer, not that it can't be done, but it is extremely difficult to build a business if you are a private account. Now, one of the questions that I get all the time is, well, what about like kid stuff? I don't want to put my kids out there. I'll be honest, I don't either. Like I feel the same. I feel the same way. I don't want to just put, here's my kid's school address and this is the time that he goes in there and here's our house and we're away from vacation and we don't have that good of a security system. Like I'm not putting that kind of information out there. How I personally do it is my kids each have their own Instagram account that's private. I don't let anybody follow them and that's where I put all of their stuff on there. My personal account, I'll post pictures of them, but I'm never putting anything out there that I am worried about being out there. It's all pretty generic and typically it's not posted real time either. So just something to think about in terms of what kind of an account you want to be, whether that's private or public, business or personal. You cannot be a business account and a private account. You can be, if you're a business account, it's automatically public. So think about that. There's pros and cons to both, but whatever works for you. But just so you're aware, kind of the difficulties and some of the challenges around being a private account. All right.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah, of course.
Would you recommend having your personal account be a business profile, or
unless you are
do both?
My personal belief is that unless you are let's say Odom Wellness has a page and then their CEO is Katie Odom, unless you have two massive accounts and help managing them, I would keep them all as one account. I think to keep good content in two different places is really hard. The other thing is your Shaklee business and your Shaklee posts will do better if you're posting a lot not about Shaklee. So someone doesn't want to follow you if the only thing you're talking about is business. Building a business on social works when you're sharing your life. So I wouldn't recommend having two.
So then all right. So right now I have a personal account and I made it public. But can I take that account and switch it and make it a business account?
Yeah.
So I get those insights. So that's what I'm saying. Would you recommend, mine's public right now and I'm fine with that. Because of.
Yeah, you can switch it anytime.
Do you think it's better to have it, no one notices if it's a business account versus a personal?
Yeah, I'll tell you how they notice. I'll show you, it'll come up, but it will, if you're a business account, it gives you a subcategory under your name. That's it.
But you don't have to recreate a whole, no. I can have Katie Odom 09 or whatever mine is, be a business account without having to recreate a whole profile.
Correct. You
Okay.
can change it at any time. So if you go into the settings, there's an option to click on account and then it will say change to a business account or change to a personal account, depending on what you are. So you can go back and forth as much as you want, but it doesn't require a separate account.
Does a business account allow you to link in Instagram stories, or is that still when you have to have 10,000 followers?
No, you can. 10,000 followers will give you the swipe up feature to shop directly from there. But no, you can still do a link if you're private, but nobody else will see it unless they're following you. Any other questions on that? Okay, so we're gonna just go through the basic setup of this, and it's a lot more thought out than you would think. Like when I first signed up for Instagram, I probably took 30 seconds filling some of this out, thinking that it didn't really matter, but your profile is actually quite a big deal. So we're gonna walk through the setup of that. So this is just where you would edit your profile. A couple of tips. Number one, you need to use a high quality image that is the same across all platforms. So if you have a Facebook profile, a Twitter one, a LinkedIn, whatever it is, you are best to use your picture on all of them, the same one, so that people can easily identify you. You also want to make sure that it's not like an image of you and like 3 people and they're like, okay, which one is Sarah Ferris in there? I'm not quite sure. Make sure that it's very easily identifiably you. High quality image. This is kind of like your headshot. Like this is a big deal. Make sure you have a good photo there that's easy to recognize. So step 2 on the name portion of it, that's your actual name. Step 3, the username is how you're identified on Instagram. So for example, my name is Kristen Cunningham. My username on Instagram is Kind of Cunning. I don't know why. That was just some weird college thing. I thought it was a good thing at the time. I don't know. But you have your actual name and then your username. So that's the difference there. And then on step 4, that's where you can put a website. So I want to talk about this right now. Instagram allows you to link out to one single link. There is a third-party app called Linktree. If you're somebody who has multiple websites, maybe you have a blog and a PWS, and maybe you have a nutrition website or a different PWS, and you have several places that you're sending people, if you sign up for Linktree, Linktree will create a link that will then link out to 4 different places or however many you have. Instagram itself will only allow you to put 1 in there, but Linktree will allow you to do 1 link that links out to several different places. I'll also tell you that this link might change like on a weekly or monthly basis, kind of depending on what you're talking about in your business and what you're really pushing. Maybe it's pushing to Healthprint at one point because there's a great Healthprint promo. Maybe it's pushing to your blog for a while because you have a really great download. Never think of that as like set in stone, because there's always a reason that you could change that. And again, if you just want it there and static and have all your options there, Linktree will allow you to do that. Okay, so going on with editing your profile, number 5 is your bio.
Sorry, Kristen.
Yeah.
Sorry, question. So in general, do you recommend putting like the only website I have is my Shaklee website. Would you recommend that I put that there or no?
Yeah, if that's the website that you have, then absolutely, because you want to send people there. But then what you have to make sure is go back to your PWS and make sure that if someone randomly is hopping onto your Instagram account and clicking on your PWS, go make sure your PWS is edited and set up exactly how you want them to see.
Well, the other thing too, Julie, is you have different links. Like, for example, you might want the Healthprint, but then I have a link that's join my team that links to the Go Wellness website too. So there are different things you can always link.
Yeah.
To. Or if you have a Facebook, let's say you're doing a Facebook event, you can link there. Or let's say you're doing an interest sheet for the cleanse that they fill out a Google Doc. There's so many different ways of linking people to different things too.
And that would be the reason that you might edit that too, quite frankly. Like if you're doing a big detox and you're linking out to that because it's detox time, then you should put that there. If you're doing a big youth push, there's different reasons to change that. So.
And when you see in other people's posts, they say link in profile, that's the link they're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
But I want to spend a little bit of time in the bio section. This is really important. You have 150 words, or maybe it's 150 characters. I think that's wrong. To really let people know, again, like we talked about at the beginning, who are you and why should I follow you? I would spend some time looking at other people's bios, like who is a social influencer online that you love to follow? Go look at their bio. Look how they edit it. I'm not saying copy it, but what did you like about it? Spend some time to really see the ones you like, what you think sounds good, and then kind of reiterate them for yourself. I'll tell you, you'll get it wrong the first time. You're going to write something, and in about 2 weeks, you're going to be like, I don't like how that sounds, and you're going to change it. But it's important to just start somewhere. And I would spend a lot of time really crafting that bio. You don't have a lot of words to do it, but get your information out there as engagingly and as quickly as possible. One just quick tip, in the bio, it's really difficult to edit within the Instagram app. So I would put it in your notes, like on your phone, and then just copy and paste it over. But again, you want to think about your bio, and I'm going to give you some examples of them on what do I get from following you and who are you? So the rest of just the profile as we edit it, the page you would link back to a Facebook business page if you already have one. If not, and you're a business account on Instagram, you automatically get set up with one. For the category, you can see right here it's defaulting to it's health and beauty. You can pick from a list which option best identifies you. You don't get to customize that. You have a list of like 15 to 20 options that you can pick. So Sarah, you had asked, like, how do they know if you're a business account? They know if you're a business account if you have a category underneath you. That's like the identifier. And then for contact options, how do people get in touch with your business? So if you have like a separate line or a separate email for your Shaklee business, that's where you would put that. And then the private information is how do people get in touch with you personally? So that's pretty self-explanatory in that, but the one thing that I want to really drive home is your bio. And I want to give you kind of a practical example of this. Let's say that we meet at kindergarten drop-off and you tell me your name. Where do most people go look? They're going to go look you up on social. So this is the page that they're going to see when they go check you out on social. And I think we'd all be lying if we'd said we hadn't Instagram stalked a person at some point, right? At least I hope so. I'm telling myself that to make myself feel better. But nonetheless, that's why you want your bio to be clear. If you really think that I'm a great prospect to join your team, I'm going to go look at your Instagram. You have an opportunity to like really show me everything that you want me to know about you in a matter of minutes. So make sure that bio is engaging enough that people will scroll through and see what you're all about. Okay. So these are just a couple of examples of bios. So you guys all know Kristen Jakubowski. I think she has a great bio. And you can tell that she's a business account because it's marked as health and beauty. So therapist by trade, side hustler at heart, girl mom, wrestling coach's wife, better nutrition equals a better life, free health assessment. So I love how she broke this out like line by line. She used emojis to break it up. It's aesthetically easier to read. But really is what she's telling you is I used to be a therapist. I'm not anymore. I love having a side business. I am a mother of girls. My husband coaches wrestling. I think better nutrition is really important for a better life. And here's a health assessment for it. She didn't use that many words to do it, but I'm essentially getting the same thing. So make sure you spend some time to craft your bio, not only from a content perspective, but aesthetically too. This is an example of somebody that you already know who they are, but even how she separates her bio, it's quick things. They're separated by the lines. New York Times bestseller, motivational speaker, podcast host. You see exactly what you're getting in their bio. And then this is Tracy. I think she also has a great bio. Recovering perfectionist, podcast, encouraging your spirit, energizing your body, building a high vibe tribe. I see a lot of personality in that bio, and I also get a lot of information about Tracy rather than just her saying, oh my gosh, I used to be a perfectionist, but I'm trying really hard not to be. I have my own podcast. It's super fun. I like to help people and encourage people. I think energy is really important, and I love making a community. Like, what is more engaging, how I just said it or how Tracy has written it? So homework assignment for tonight, spoiler alert, we'll cover it at the end, but I want everybody to spend time in their bio. And if you need help crafting it, you're definitely welcome to reach out to me. I'd love to help you. But spend some time looking at other people's bios and then go back and recraft your own. Okay. So posting. There's really two different places that you post. You post in your stories and your feed. We're going to try to talk about the differences between them. How to post to your feed. I'm assuming most of you know this on the line, so I'm just going to blow through this, but it's just that plus sign. If you hit that at the bottom of your screen, it will walk you through step by step on how to do a post. Let me go back here. So your posts, when someone talks about a post or a tile or your feed, they're talking about this part where it says number 2 down here. They're talking about these. When somebody talks about your stories, they're talking about everything up here. Okay. The other thing about a post is you really want to make sure that that is great content. That's typically where it's going to be more curated, good quality images, engaging captions, and really you want to think about this as once it's out there, it's there. So I would never recommend doing a post with a graphic over top of it of like a flash sale, because that's not always going to be the case. So this is where you're going to have more high level posts, not your specific, hey, buy this cleanse, join my Prove It challenge, buy my mascara. That's not, your posts are not where that will live. Your posts are like your magazine. That's like your advertisement, your magazine. If I want to get to know Sarah Ferris, I'm going to go to those posts and I'm going to see a lot about what she's about. So in going back to that exercise we did at the beginning, that's where you should have everything that kind of fits into your brand voice about what you're talking about. Now, the question I get a lot is, well, can I talk about my business at all on these posts? Absolutely, but you're doing it in more of a philosophical way. So an example is maybe you just got off the cruise with a group of friends and you posted a picture and you talk about how important community is to you and how important setting a goal and earning something is and how much you love it. That's talking about your business without saying, join my Shaklee team. We have a discount right now. The mascara is $49 or whatever. You're thinking about these posts as more high level philosophical. And again, I think, I don't know if I covered this before, but you really want that Shaklee content to be about 20% of everything you do. So if you want to be good at building Shaklee on social, you have to be good at not talking about Shaklee on social too. It seems counterproductive, but I promise it works. I recommend that people really try to plan content out as much as possible. You know, Sarah Galbraith always says, if you feel creative, write. Like my guess is that several of you, probably all of you actually, have things that you're passionate about or things that you feel strongly about or experiences that you love to share with people. Write about them. And then when it makes sense to add them into your feed, you already have them ready. So spend time on these posts. They're good quality images and they're engaging captions. A post will stay until you remove it. Again, it should reflect your brand voice. And the one thing I want to say is they should have varied energy. And what I mean by that is, you know, those people on social media that you're like, come on, you're not always that motivating. Like not everybody is Gandhi all the time, right? Sometimes we need a little Kim in our life. So make sure you're balancing the energy of your post and you're not coming on too forward of over the top. Everything has to have meaning and motivation and not that I'm telling you to be inauthentic or to be fake or to be whatever, but you just want to make sure that your posts have varied energy, because if people start seeing that the only things that you're talking about are really heavy, you can be hard to follow. And I think you probably have seen people that you follow, that you see them, that every post is like some big saga. And not that that's not okay to write about sometimes, but you don't want to write about it all the time. So a lot of your posts should just be light and fun. Some are going to inspire and motivate and be more serious. I like to think of these as hard sells versus soft sells, and a good balance is 3 to 1. You might just put a picture up with a couple of emojis or a lyric from your favorite song. That's okay. The more you do that, the more you're just showcasing your personality and really connecting back to your brand voice. Don't feel like every single post has to be like the game changer that does it for everybody. Make sure that you have a balance in there. And I think that takes some of the stress off posting, because we talked about this before. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to write? have fun with it. Still showcase your personality, and don't worry about every post having to convince somebody to join your team. It won't happen that way anyway. So make sure that you have varied energy. That's really important in that. Okay. So the next thing to talk about is how to post your stories. I'm sure this group knows that, but your stories, you would push that little circle in the top left-hand corner. There will be a blue arrow there, and that will start the story process. It will walk you through step by step. So I want to kind of give some context to stories. Stories really should be like easy, lighthearted. They're almost like the blooper reel or the behind the scenes of your feed, and it's interactive content. The reason I love stories, and this is where I would put my Shaklee post about, hey, join my Prove It Challenge, or who wants to buy a cleanse? I've got 3 left. That is where these posts would live. They would be in your stories. The reason why is because that immediately starts a one-on-one conversation with you and that person. When somebody posts, like, they may not say, hey, I would love to buy the cleanse, Kate, because they might not feel comfortable commenting on a public post that everybody can see. But if they're just responding to you and going back and forth with you, that takes a little pressure off. It's easier. Like, pressure sounds kind of like a heavy word to use, but it's true. Like, people feel more comfortable responding back and forth to you than they do on like a public forum. So I think it's very important to realize that some of these more specific hard sell call to action posts at Shaklee, they always will live better in a story. Your content disappears after 24 hours unless you tell it not to. Now, what do I mean by not telling it not to? That's called a highlight reel. So these buttons that you see right here, that's my highlight reel. I came up with a few categories of what I wanted to talk about and how I wanted to organize that. And then every time I post a story, if I want it to stay on my page forever, I can just mark it as a highlight and it will go into one of these circles, and it will be there long term. So otherwise, stories will disappear after 24 hours. So stories are really critical too, for a couple of reasons. The first one is, I'll go through that in a minute. Let me go back to here. This is the first time this presentation has been done, so I'm trying to navigate. I don't know exactly when things pop up, so sorry about that. But in talking about your story, people are always asking how often should I post to my feed or to my stories? Your feed, I like to think about twice a week, but your stories, you really need to be posting to those 3 or 4 times a day. Now, if you are just starting on social media, you're thinking like, oh my gosh, 3 or 4 times a day, that sounds so stressful. I promise you, the more you start utilizing the story feature, the easier you will see that it is. Sometimes a story is just gonna be a great sunset that you see out the window, or maybe it's a picture of the meal you made with a DM me if you want the recipe, or maybe it's a picture, a selfie of you checking into a restaurant. Stories are easy. You don't have to put a ton of thought into them. It's just about staying front of mind and really getting out there and showing people your life and what you're doing. It's another way of building trust. So that being said, I'll kind of walk you through how to do a highlight reel. Step 1 is you really need to identify, like, what is that content that you want to talk about. For me, you can see what I did. You might identify it based on like healthy eating or a cleanse or a business opportunity. Play around with it. And I would also say, go look at how other people do their highlight reels. I would never tell you to copy what somebody does, but you can also learn a lot from how people are presenting themselves and adapt that to a way that's really going to make sense for you. So step 1, identify your highlight reel content. Step 2, if you want to add content to those highlight reels, you have to create a story. And then what will happen, step 3, you'll have a little highlight icon in the bottom right-hand corner that has a heart on it. If you click that, it will ask you where you want to put it. You'll put in the highlight name. You can add a cover to it, and then just tap add. So pretty self-explanatory. The question I get all the time, how did you get your buttons all look like that? You could get those on, like, if you're really good at Canva or an app, you could create your own. I do not have the bandwidth or the desire to figure out how to do that. So I actually bought mine on Etsy, and as all they are images. So I think I paid like $4 or something for them. Yeah, so pre-made buttons can be purchased. You can design your own. Play around with that too. Go look at other people. What are they using? What do you like? What kind of fits well with your aesthetic, and kind of find that. Okay, So now what? We've kind of talked a lot about the basics. I don't know if you guys know this, but we have a monthly content calendar where we have given you specific prompts that you can post with as they're not related to Shaklee, and we'll give you the days that you should be posting about Shaklee. And you may not follow it specifically, but as you look at it, you'll have a good idea of the balance of Shaklee to non-Shaklee. So you want to modify those based on your brand voice and how often you want to post. If you're really wanting to hit it hard and be aggressive, maybe you're posting more like 3 or 4 times a week. But make sure that you are posting and that you're following a little bit of a calendar. The other thing that I will say is give a clear call to action in each post to encourage engagement. That's really important because, like, think of it this way. If I took a picture of myself on vacation and just said, I love vacation, it's like, oh, well, that's cool. But if I took a picture of myself on vacation and I said, hey, I'm in Vegas for the first time, where's your favorite restaurant? Which post is going to have more engagement? The first one or the second one? Absolutely the second one. So as you're thinking about your post, give what's called a call to action or people to do something, like double tap if you like this, or let me know your recommendations for this, or what's your favorite parenting advice? You name it. The more you can ask people for something specific and get involved, the better engagement you'll generally get on your post rather than have them be just static.
Kristen, can I ask? Oh, yeah, never mind. I was going to ask, where does this calendar lie?
So this is like just a picture of it. The link, if you go to events.shaklee.com/social tips, you can also navigate there from the homepage, but this is what you'll see. So what we have is we have it divided into stories and feed. So the blue ones would be all your stories, and we update them based with like any social media holidays that we add in. So you can kind of see May 4th, Star Wars Day, share a goofy meme from your favorite Star Wars movie. Like, we give you a lot of that. And then this one, we were on the dream trip. So we added that in throughout the week. And then you'll see a lot of them will say picks from story prompt list. If you click on it, there was a whole list of different prompt ideas of stories. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming to think of all the content, so we wanted to make it as easy for you as possible. We gave you a lot of ideas just to get started. Again, you'll do it in your own brand voice, so how Katie says it will sound very different than how I say it, and how Julie says it is going to sound different from Sarah, but it gives you a place to start. So I'd recommend coming here, if for no other reason, just to kind of keep yourself on track. And if you don't worry about following it day to day, but what you can see is there's more blue than green on this graphic, right? Green is like the least seen color here. The reason is because you're not talking about Shaklee all the time. If you want your Shaklee posts to drive home and to really engage with people, you got to be good at what you're not posting about Shaklee. So in a lot of ways, the non-Shaklee posts are more important. So I think that's it for the beginner course.
Can I ask a question on that calendar?
Yeah.
So some of them you have, or like on here, say to share a woman's health topic. Oh, just the article from the Naturally blog, not that you're sharing like the Naturally blog in there.
Yeah.
But do you find like, so for some of that stuff, I feel like Instagram, like when you have like a lot of really good content, like speaking content, people aren't looking at that reading that all the time in your feeds. Am I wrong?
No.
They feel like people go to Instagram to like see the pictures, and when a picture catches their eye, they might read it, but.
Yes, for sure. Overarchingly, absolutely. Facebook is going to be a platform where it's more of like a forum discussion in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get the crazy Facebook fights on Instagram like you would on Facebook. You all know what I'm talking about. We've all popped the popcorn a few times to read some of those. That doesn't exist as much on Instagram. It's more about aesthetics. And we'll talk about that kind of later in some of our other trainings. But Instagram really is more about that pretty picture. But one of the things that we talked about earlier is just that balance of energy and tone in your posts. Like, it's not very often that I will do a very long post. But if I do a long post, chances are that people will read it because it's so out of character for me. Does that make sense? So if you're always doing long posts, absolutely not. People won't do it. But if you're like doing lighthearted and fun stuff and then you do a post that's like truth bomb, or I got to get real with you, or I cannot stop thinking about this. Like, as long as you're setting it up in a way that is going to engage people and bring them in, I think people will read it, especially if you give them a call to action, especially if you're sharing from the heart, they will read it. Will they read a 3-paragraph post every time? No. But that's where the idea of just balancing tone and energy comes in. So yes, absolutely, Sarah, Facebook is kind of more that forum focused. But if you're smart on Instagram and you kind of play your cards right and you're balanced with your approach, you will have an opportunity that maybe you do want to talk about what it's like having a corporate job. And, you know, everyone thinks I'm putting words in her mouth, but like maybe people think it's one thing and it's really different, and it's really different for you. And you want to say, you know, what you've learned from it. Like, people will probably read it as long as you've had that varied energy and you're not always like on your soapbox. Does that make sense? Not that you're on a soapbox, but you know what I mean.
No, it was really good. Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions?
Well, I just want to comment really quick, Kristen, that the stories piece I really feel like is critical right now, because I found that it's been a way of interacting with lots of people on a daily basis. When you ask questions, or you do quizzes, or you do polls, or you ask for advice, those kinds of things. And so I think that if you haven't started using it, I encourage you to start, because it's a way that people are going to quickly get to know you behind the scenes in a very real, authentic way. But you're also going to get a higher interaction, because people are going to be laughing at your pictures or sending you a message like, we missed you today, or just different things like that. Sam is so consistent. She's so good with her stories, and she just does a great job of just weaving in, you know, personal and business very consistently. And so I hope that you guys will start to utilize that, because there's so much potential right now. Stories.
Well, and one thing that you have to think about too, from a story perspective, Katie could not be more right. But when you log into Instagram, your feed is right in front of you. Like, you're going to see it, you're going to scroll through it, and you don't get to pick what you see. They put it in front of you. But for stories, you have to go watch it. So if somebody's watching your story, they're making that conscious decision to say, what does Sarah have to say tonight? Or what is Rebecca saying now? They're saying, I want to see what you're saying. So the cool part about that is too, if you think about applying it from like a Shaklee business perspective, is you probably have people who watch your stories that aren't on your team, that you would love to get on your team. What I would do, if you have those people that like every single time they're watching your stories, reach out to them. Not in a way that's like, oh, hey girl, you would be so good on my Shaklee team. Don't be that person. Nobody likes that person. It's just awkward for everybody. But if you see that your friend from high school is always watching your stories, send her a message. Hey, how's it going? Start watching her stories. Start commenting on her posts. That's the idea of building the relationship. And then what's going to happen is at some point, you're going to be talking about something, or you're going to be able to say, hey, would you ever want to do this with me? I think you'd be great at it. Or you're going to put out there, my mascara is $50. And she's going to be like, okay, I'll try it. It's all about building the relationship, and be authentic about it. It's not like you're going to just talk to them 3 times, offer them the business, and then never talk to them again. Like, be authentic. You guys are all so good at that. It's the same concept on social. But the stories, Katie said it right on, are so critical, because they're making the conscious decision to watch what you put out there. So
Kristen, exactly what you just said, because like I make sure, like, we all go look at our stories and see who's looked at it, right? You're all like, you're creeping on your own creepers.
totally.
I make sure I do that, because like I've seen so many people that I'm like, God, I cannot believe this person's like watching all my stories. Or like, you know, just social media is so much, you not forget about people, but everyone has a billion stories now, like across their way. You can't watch them all. And I always make sure to go through and check whoever watched mine and go make sure that I at least watch theirs if I don't comment on something, but at least that I'm like looking to see what they want. If they think I'm important, I want to see what they have to say.
Absolutely. You totally right. And it's all about the relationship, and like, go watch other people's stories. I mean, we're done. I've kind of covered everything on this course, but the next course that we're going to do, and Katie's going to find a time for that, is really on engagement and how you can expand your audience and how you can get people to engage with you more, but because that's critical. Otherwise, like, I mean, you're not just putting these posts out there because you just love putting posts out there. You know, you're hoping to help people. You're hoping to find a solution to a health need or a business need, and you have to do that through relationships. So we're going to talk about ways to get better engagement next week. So let me just pause right there to see if there's any questions, and I'm going to give you guys some homework for the week.
I do have a question, Kristen.
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
So I have a tendency to, whenever I do an Instagram post, I always put it on Facebook as well. Are you saying that that's kind of not necessary? Just stick with Instagram and you don't have to, you know, tag your Facebook along with that? Yeah,
let me talk to that because I get that question a lot. So in general, you shouldn't just be linking back and doing the same content on both mediums, because chances are you're showing the same thing to the same people. My personal philosophy on it is I think it's okay to link for a while. And the reason of that is I think it's okay to do it because if you have a big crowd on Facebook and a huge following there, and you're just starting to build on Instagram, I think it's okay to link them because it always says posted from Instagram. So I got a lot of followers on I don't have a lot of followers. I made it sound like I'm this big, huge deal, but a lot of my followers found me because they followed me on Facebook and I was linking my accounts, but I wouldn't use that as a long-term strategy. What will happen is the more you start to use these mediums, the more you will see what content does well at which place. Like Facebook, for example, is going to be more interactive and more discussion. So maybe, like to Sarah's point, maybe that is where you would post like an article and say, I read this, what are your thoughts on it? Something like that will work better on Facebook than it will on Instagram. It's just kind of the nature of Instagram. It's more about aesthetic and less about the words, where Facebook is definitely more of a forum. So you'll start to identify the content. But the other thing I'll tell people too is if you have a massive following on Facebook, don't just leave Facebook for the sake of getting on Instagram. Be strategic with how you do that. If what you're doing is working well on one platform, stick with it. These principles that we've talked about tonight, about the percentage that you're sharing Shaklee, how often you're posting, what you're doing, how you're engaging, that exists. And that is true just as true to Facebook as it is for Instagram. So I think it's about just being aware of your audience and then being strategic about how you transition over if you choose to do that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Anyone else? Okay. So I got to give you guys some homework for the night, and Katie will let me know when we're getting back together. If any of you want one-on-one help, I know Katie's super good at this. I'm also more than willing to kind of walk through and brainstorm with you, but I want you to go through your bio and I want you to redo your bio. I want you to tighten it up, and I want you to make sure it is how you want it. I say that, and then the next sentence I say is going to be super confusing when I say you're going to get it wrong, and eventually you'll go back and tweak it, but you have to start somewhere. So rearrange your bio, put a little time in it, go look at ones that you like, ones that make sense for you, and try to rework it. The other thing is I want you all to identify your highlight reels. So if you don't have them already, figure out which ones you want. If you have them already, go back through and do a quick edit. Make sure that they're clear, they're crisp, it's how you want them to look, it's the content that you want to live on there. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you, I want you to all commit to posting like 3 stories a day for the rest of the week. And some of you are like, oh my gosh, so stressful. But trust me, as soon as you do it, if 3 is stressing you out, commit to 2. But the more you do it, the easier it will get. And there is, and I don't want to get too much into this now because I've got 4 minutes left, but there is something in the algorithm that is saying the more consistently you're using Instagram, the more consistently people are seeing you. So it's not just about practice for you. It's about making sure you're in front of everybody. So the bio, the highlights, Instagram stories, and all in that context, remember, like 20% Shaklee. Your stories could technically be a little higher because they don't live on your post quite on your page as long. But as a general rule, 20% Shaklee. Okay? What other questions? We got a few minutes, so if there's anything else, let me know. Sarah, you're muted.
Told me that right away. When you say 20% Shaklee, are you meaning like 20% of like Oh, showing mascara, or like, you know how they say to do like posts too that are your brand, which is probably talking about Shaklee, but not really talking about Shaklee.
Well, if you're going to talk about working out, talk about how much you love working out, but you don't need to say, and here's the supplements I'm taking to do it every single time.
Would you consider that a Shaklee post or a non-Shaklee post?
Non-Shaklee post. I would consider a Shaklee post like
calling out a product, calling out.
Yeah, calling out a product, calling out like a, hey, we're adding to the challenge, who wants to join, or we have this amazing offer. That those posts, very minimal. And I will tell you though, that in your non-Shaklee, like even if maybe your brand is exercising, that's fine to talk about it, but I would be so careful about using the word Shaklee anywhere.
That's what my next question was going to be. You're not to do that anymore. Less
is more. And not because you're hiding from it. It's not like, oh, Katie hasn't said the word Shaklee in a while. Maybe Shaklee doesn't work. Like, no, it's not about hiding it. The reason is because you don't want to put out there something that I'm going to go find my own answers to. So let's say we're friends from high school and I'm like, oh, Sarah Ferris, what's she up to? She's doing Shaklee. I'm probably going to click on Shaklee. I'm probably going to Google it. I'm probably going to make up my own opinions on Shaklee before you have the opportunity to tell me about it. So the whole goal of that is you want people in that one-on-one conversation so that you can control the message on it. It's not in a way that you're not proud of it. It's not that you're hiding of it. It's more about information dissemination. So you want to stay ahead of that. What else?
Who's the 309 number? I don't know who that is, but we can connect. Oh, it's Kim. Kim, we can connect later.
Hi, Kim. All right.
Thank you, Kristen. This was so helpful, and I am so excited to use all this knowledge and grow.
Of course. Well, Katie has, if you don't have my information, Katie knows how to get a hold of me. And then, yeah, I guess we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Talk to you guys soon.